Today we will be talking about peer executive groups and our affinity partner, peer executive groups for peer groups. I myself have had the opportunity to be in a peer group before. It's an amazing experience. It's probably one of the first things that I recommend to people. It's kind of like having your own, I'd say, board of directors, but people who get it, people who understand. Sometimes it's hard to discuss things with your team. And there's a lot of things that you need to workshop, whether it's issues with other owners, maybe family members who are also owners, or stuff you're trying to do with your staff or your business. I know in my personal experience, it went from, helping to grow my business. The first meeting that I ever went to saved us $25,000 a year, to eventually selling the business. And my peer group was with me throughout that entire process, helping me battle test the ideas, talk through it. You're under a non-disclosure and a lot of other things that Dan's going to talk about in a minute, but I can't highly recommend the experience enough. To get away and be able to talk about your business and work on your business is just incredibly important and something that I think that everybody can benefit from. And so we're super proud to have a great partner with great facilitators. And I do think, as Dan will talk about in a minute, that facilitators are important to this. Because you need people to keep you on track. You need people to keep you accountable. You need somebody to keep the conversation constrained and to make sure that you're bringing the right things to discuss and then bringing in the expertise of others into your group so that you're having those quality conversations. But it's magical when it works, and Peer Executive Groups does an amazing job doing that. And from there, Dan, I think I will let you take it away, introduce yourself, and tell us more about Peer Group.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I hope that has recorded your intro so we can use that as a commercial on all social media platforms. So,
right.
But I appreciate everybody joining us today. I see some familiar names here with Amanda there and Matt, and of course, Bruce, one of our members. Appreciate you being on the call, Bruce. Certainly chime in when you see the opportunity. You can hear it straight from a existing member and what he's experiencing. So my background is being a peer group facilitator, believe it or not. Back in the 90s, I worked with car dealerships and collision centers, and along with Lance Bull, who's also one of our facilitators, he works with 3 of our groups. We worked in the automotive space. We were very much focused on metrics and improvement, and that was at the behest of the manufacturer. So the manufacturer obviously is trying to help with parts and service and taking it to the next level and get their mind off of equipment sales, right? Because they were losing margin there. So that's kind of how it got started. It got started back in the 50s, peer groups. I'm not sure when the first bag group at ARA happened, but it wasn't that much longer after that. So business analysis or business advisory groups have really been the way that it was spoken about in the past. My background was doing the automotive. I moved over to equipment rental in 2001. So that is a long time for some of you. You probably weren't even born. But we had our first group called Premier launch right after 9/11. It was difficult to get people to travel, but we were able to pull it off. And that was the first ARA peer group that involved us, peer executive groups. They still meet to this day. They're now over 21 years and continue to meet. Not the same faces. Some of them are, we had a couple that were still around, but for the most part, there's been transition in the group. And that's one of 23 groups. So we'll get into the details on that. My background is accounting finance, love numbers, a number cruncher, love benchmarking, have been a small business consultant my whole life, owned small businesses, partnered in different ventures around small businesses. And peer groups is been my baby for a while. Charlie now is sharing that baby. So
helping you raise the baby.
Sound horrible. I don't know why I said that, but anyway, all right. So let's move on. So that's me, my background, accounting, finance, and business in general. And again, thank you, Jeff, for allowing us to do this today, as well as Josh. The agenda that we have for today is to really talk about the group makeup and how that works, the benefits of a peer group, what you get out of being in a peer group, and then really talking about which group is right for you. So everybody's at a different stage in their business. And so we want to take some time and talk about like which type of group you would be part of. We'll show you a sample agenda and talk through that. And certainly, Bruce, if you want to pipe in at that point, you're welcome to say some things. Or the next part, which is about roundtables. And roundtables are essentially topical content that we will go over as a group. And we have rules to follow when we go around the horn and talk about topics. So I'll explain what that is. And then any questions you guys might have about peer group experience, we'll be glad to answer that at the end.
Sure. And also feel free, if you've got a question that comes up, feel free to throw it in the chat and I'll kind of keep track of those and we can add them when we get to the end there.
Yeah, just quick comment here is peer groups are great. You learn, it's very selfish. You're very focused on yourself. But that previous slide, you'll see that, you know, we take time to tour manufacturing facilities, understand our vendors, supplier network a lot stronger. We then meet in meeting space, whether it's provided by that supplier or it's at a hotel. And then, of course, we have usually a fun activity of some sort, which is the Chicago Cubs game. So that was fun this past May. More pictures of happy faces. There you
Yeah,
go.
right.
So this is kind of the makeup. So you get in a room, and we've had as little as 5 or 6 in a room. The ideal is probably 10 to 12. 10 to 12 puts just enough formality into the agenda to make things rhythmic, right? And that's ultimately what we're looking for, that people walk away with actionable items as well as get some things accomplished. They are non-competing business owners. So you typically don't see 2 from the same market. And that's part of our management is to, you know, make sure everybody's got a specific group where they don't have a competitor in the group. Similar revenue size. That being said, we have some people with 100 employees and some people with 10 employees in the same group. Similar inventory. So you would be put in a group that might be focused on tool and equipment or event and tent. So depending on that type of format, your structure of your inventory, that will dictate where you might go. We do have dealer groups now as well. So these are event and equipment groups for the most part. It's about 80% of the groups that we facilitate are from rental. And then determining what group is right for you. We have everyone fill in a profile, and the ARA has, you know, I think they might have a link on their website.
A very similar one.
Yeah. So you're clicking on that and you're basically identifying or giving us information about yourself and your business, what segment you happen to be in. If anybody has heard about peer executive groups, Top Gun is the top quartile of performers based on earnings. We actually now have broken it into mixed combo. We call it hybrid. And that includes hardware, it includes building material work that goes along with rental. So we have a section for that. We have equipment dealerships separate, and then we have equipment broken into 2 focuses. One is construction, heavy construction equipment, and the other one is homeowner market. You may be in a group with a split between homeowner and construction, but your financial benchmarking would be grouped with that other segment in addition to being in your group as well. So your financials would be shared. So the size and inventory of the business is another thing that dictates what group. Look at your size in terms of revenue, headcount, number of locations. We have one group that is called Platinum, and they are almost everyone in there is multi-site. I think we had 1 or 2 people that were single locations, and they bought 2 or 3 more. so they caught up to the rest of the group. So those are multi-location operators in that particular group. And then again, as I stated earlier, on construction and event. The region that you're from. So we've had a group that formed that was all Pacific Coast region. And so they're called Pack Bag is the name of their group. And you need to be a Western States operator to be part of that group, but cannot compete with anybody else who's, geographically in that group. We had a Southeast type of format happening with event planning or event rental at one point. So, it's possible to do a regional. We've had requests to do Northwest region. So we could potentially pull that off. We have a couple people names right now. We need a couple more in order to pull that group off. And then again, it's just critical that they're non-competing. So benefits of a peer group. Let's see here. Just checking the pictures out. So I have a couple different groups there. Event planning group or event rental group, and actually both are event rental groups.
Yeah, both event groups.
Yeah. So our format is static, but not
The same every time.
You can change it, in other words. So the way that we set it up is right now we have 23 meetings in the fall. They're 2 in-person, I should say they're 2 days each on average. But some have 2.5 days, some have 1.5 days. So when you join a peer group, you have 2 of those a year. We have yet to have somebody go to a 3rd or 4th. When I started in the 90s, we were actually doing 4 a year, which is a lot of travel. So I think 2 is the nice hot spot. Being able to get away in the spring, get away in the fall. In some cases, it's a winter, summer meeting time frame. And
especially
usually,
on the event side, they lean more towards winter, summer.
Correct. And it's usually hosted by a member, but it doesn't have to be. So we've gone up to the tundra in North Dakota to meet with Bobcat. We've, gone on trips with the group to different marketplaces. Because we have 230 members in peer groups, a lot of them are very much like, hey, you're welcome to bring a group here anytime you want. So we had one, I think it was last spring or something, or it might have been fall. We ended up with 4 groups visiting Arvada Rentals outside Denver, and had some similar suppliers come in and sponsor part of the meeting, pick up some of the costs of the meeting. And we have, each group gets a midpoint meeting. That's critical because you're obviously doing work. So you have your to-do pile or 3 action items that come out of your in-person meeting. We want to see how you're doing on it. So that's your chance to kind of say, hey, I'm moving right along with those 3 action items, or I got stuck on one of them. That one's, you're not going to see me finish that one by next fall, whatever it might be. So that's the midpoint meeting. We also do monthly benchmarking in some cases. So a group might want to look at their sales every month. They submit it, and then we show them a rate of change. And there's a whole thing about rate of change that's important to determine, if you're changing or growing at an accelerating rate versus a decelerating rate, or if you're not growing, what are my actions? What should I be working on? So the facilitator and the group itself will give you some direction and some ideas around that. Actually, I want to ask, is there any way to unmute somebody? I just was.
Yeah, I think you can just unclick them. Who you need?
Yeah, Bruce. I just want to see if Bruce does.
Yeah,
monthly.
they can all unmute themselves.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Bruce, do you do monthly benchmarking, like the rate of change?
Yeah, I do a rate of change every month.
Okay.
Just rentals, nothing in sales.
Okay, so he's looking at rental revenue every month, and so then he reports back to his group. And you guys all do that in that group, Bruce?
Most everybody, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's late in the month before they get it entered, depending on their financials, how they do those. So,
well, good to hear it. And so everybody also submits their financials between January 1 and March 15th. Sometimes we let them go to April 15th. So if you have to have that extra time, all the financials come through and we pressure test them. There is a defined chart of accounts that needs to be filled in. We can do that for you, or you can do it yourself. Depends on, what your comfort level is. We pressure test all of those P&Ls and the balance sheets. And then based on that, then we give you your composite book back for your group, and you review it in your spring meeting with your group. We like colors and pictures, so we usually look for green versus red. So if you see red on your composite book on your column, that should tip you off that you have some action items that you need to work out related to financial management. But that's the point of doing the financial benchmarking. If you're not up to speed on financials and that's not your thing, don't worry about it. We have a ton of people that join in that condition, and we quickly get them up to speed and working with that. The other thing is anybody who's taught to the industry or spoken to the industry, we have the ability to pull them into those meetings. So I think that's a pretty important piece to note. We had an interesting morning this morning in that one group has 3 vendors coming in one day. So we've kind of established like an
That's a
order
lot.
of events and sponsorship and what that looks like. But usually they come with some sponsor money, take care of happy hour or something. It might be like that. So the 2 days away allow for a lot of personal time with the group, to kind of catch up with each other, work-life balance. You can address both business issues as well as non-business issues. And it's really, you know, the one word I look up there, and I don't know if it's spelled properly, but therapeutic is the.
It doesn't have a red line under it. It should be good,
Yeah,
right?
it's probably okay. But I would say, like, you know, if you ask anybody who's participated in peer groups, they'll probably say, yeah, that's a good word for being in a peer group. So
Yeah.
you can go ahead and change. So occasionally the peer group, they're addressing issues that keep them up at night, but sometimes they need some help. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So we'll go, hey, we're going to offer you guys a peer group scorecard for this meeting, and it's about marketing. And part of the sub context inside marketing is digital marketing, managing digital marketing for rental, right? So that's what we do. So you can have your meetings with or without peer executive groups. You don't need us, but we are consultative in nature. And so we have scorecards built out. We're currently working on one related to insurance, which is very exciting. And then also another one that's on IT and data security. So those scorecards will be added to these scorecards. The people scorecards probably use the most because everybody wants to have the best human resources department, people management department. You know, what are we doing on talent acquisition? How do we go about getting, getting the right staff in place? How do we have regular conversations with them? What is going on? You know, so all of those are addressed inside the scorecards.
And those are all just like self-reported, like it's no, you're rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of benchmark yourself against other people in the group, kind of see where you're at on a particular topic versus other people in the group.
Good explanation. Yep, that's right. It's basically there to help you create, understand what you want to work on for your company.
Right.
So this is a typical agenda. We try to get our facilitator there first. She welcomes you. We have a reception, a dinner, the first night typically. Then the meeting is the next morning. The facilitator will go over the confidentiality statement. Everybody signs an NDA, so what happens in the meeting stays in the meeting. There's all sorts of rules around that, so we have bylaws for each group, which can be customized. We also go over antitrust because we don't want to necessarily get in trouble with the government around, sharing information with each other. We can't set pricing against our competitors. So we need to be able to, look ourselves in the eye and know that we are abiding by antitrust laws. Everybody goes over the state of their business, the state of the union address.
Dan, just real quick, because I think the confidentiality aspect of this is important, and maybe Bruce, you could kind of tell your a little background for you on this. But for me, when I was in a group, like this was a different level than just like somebody that you met at a seminar or somebody that you met at an ARA of Illinois event. You had a bond with these people because of that confidentiality, because you knew that one, the things that you were sharing with them weren't leaving the room, but then also you were getting a better response because the two of you had some trust with each other. So I think that's important, and I think it's something that makes a peer group different than, you know, maybe just people you know from the industry kind of a thing. So Bruce, any comment around that or how that?
Oh yeah, I mean, because I consider the people in my peer group now, they're basically like an extended family member. I've gone and, you know, questioned with issues I have with people in my business, my brother who's my partner, always bringing him up because we are two separate entities and just, you know, sometimes we just don't get along. And so it's, I'm always bringing things up that to be able to discuss with them. And, you know, and I've learned to just trust their input, you know, and it's really been, put my mind at ease on a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Good. Well, sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
No,
thought that
that's
was an
great.
important point that we want to kind of, I think, because I do think it's something that differentiates this from, you know, just your other people in your network kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's not like attending a classroom, right? It's not like attending a class and taking notes and learning. It's a lot more personal. It's a lot more selfish. So basically, we're
I can
all
share
each
some of the
other's.
stories that happen in our meetings, but disclosure agreement, I can't.
Right, you can't. There's an NDA on that.
Yeah.
No details. But I will say that you know, I use the word selfish for a reason. It is a selfish choice to go to a peer group. You're there to basically you know, we call it get naked fast. You know, that's not part of the NDA, but the idea is like being vulnerable, being able to share like the big stuff in your head that you might not be able to share with your employees or your families for that matter, right? So it's just this great source. I'm actually in 2 peer groups, and my peer group local had met yesterday for 4 to 6 hours. It was outstanding. And then I'm in another group that meets nationally twice a year, just like this, exact same agenda. Getting back to the agenda. So state of your business, you're just talking about your business to them, what keeps you up at night, that kind of thing. From that, your facilitator will create an issues list. And some of those issues that you hear amongst the 10 may be similar. So we might have 4 people who are dealing with hiring new employees and having trouble with that. So that might be the first priority that gets addressed. So the roundtable discussions then attack those issues, and we use a systematic approach to addressing the issues. We identify the issue, discuss it, and solve it, very similar to the book Traction. You may have heard of the book Traction, but they do a thing called IDSing, which is identify, discuss, and solve. So that's part of how we get through and in the 2 days to fix things in our companies. We then make sure that there's an economic update. We want to be able to give you cutting edge, you know, up to the moment information about what we see on the horizon for your industry. We may be doing a location tour and reviewing that location. So everybody gets a little survey on their phone. They can click on it as they're walking through and respond to what they see. It then creates a survey result for the owner. And we go back and we talk to each other about what we saw and give honest, open feedback. Yes, tears have been shed, but it's part of the fun, right? What do you mean you don't like my parts counter?
Lots of remodels have happened before people's peer groups arrive also. That's the other thing that happens. And all those projects you've been putting off get done before your peer group gets there.
And don't try to clean it right before we show up either, because we know we can tell what it was always like usually. So we like to see it in its natural state. Then we also bring in resource partners for presentations. That could be Rouse Analytics. It could be anybody, right? It could be anybody who's making a presentation. The group runs itself. So they are a self entity that happens to use us, right? We put the group together, but ultimately any group can leave at any time. they have group governance. We put it in place. There's bylaws. We identify a chairperson and a vice chair and a member. And those people kind of are the steering committee for the group. They're the ones who sign off on the contracts with the hotels. So Zoe might plan, 23 meetings this fall, but she gets every chairperson to sign off that, yes, we approve the use of an overhead projector at $600, right? That kind of thing. So that's part of our structure and why it seems people like to use us, because it keeps all the messiness separate. Typically we go out to all these meals and it's all put on the facilitator's card, and then the facilitator then will charge the group back 2 weeks later. Usually it's about a week and a half, 2 weeks before you get your invoice on your shared expense. So, and we'll talk about that at the end here. And then goal setting, we basically want to make sure we end the meeting with goals set. You also will give us a survey and tell us how well that meeting went or what went wrong or that kind of thing. So this is the typical what keeps you up at night. In terms of, what keeps you up at night. I think I just want to take a minute here for you to look at this slide and maybe think to yourself right now.
Well, I think Jeff or Josh, do you guys want to throw that poll question out?
Oh, do you have that?
Slide
I didn't know you had it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Take a minute here and put that out.
So yeah,
there we go.
So if you look at people, process, and strategy
We put
topical.
Financial and exit was the other two choices.
Yeah,
Dan.
financial and exit. So what keeps you up at night? So if you can click on that, how do we get that? Is it in chat?
It popped up on my screen and then went away. So hopefully you guys are seeing it on your screens.
Yeah.
It was popped up on mine and then dropped
Did
off.
it go away?
Oh, there it
already?
is. I got it. Okay, so we can choose.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
So yeah, so you just click on what out of the one you see some of the ones on the screen, like training or recruiting or compensation, but every one of those topics or categories typically are going to have an issue that would be related to it. So if everybody can click on that and we can pull that up and see what we're looking at right now. And just a quick reminder while we're doing that Josh said you can post meeting chats questions if you want. So this is pretty interesting. So this is fascinating. So I was actually going to say majority of you would probably have said people, but it looks like money is the topic to keep you up at night. So that's good fair warning for Charlie and I as we get ready for our fall meetings.
Right.
We know what the hot topic's going to be already. So what kinds of things related to money would typically keep you up at night? Is it cash flow?
That was always mine.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to make payroll in the winter.
It could be cash flow. It could be also, related to your fleet, your refresh on your fleet for equipment rental. How do I grow my fleet and refresh my fleet? Where does that money come from? And again, we talk a lot about that in the peer groups and, trash to cash and all that good stuff, how we defleet at the rate that we should in order to be able to refleet. On the party and event side, there's a lot of different things that come into cash flow. It is still a newbie topic for peer groups, but I like to talk about cash from operations versus cash from financing and investing, right? We do get active with the balance sheets and we do supply you with vendor contacts related to funding. So if anybody needs money, that typically is something that we address in the peer groups and we're able to make contacts with, funding sources. So that's helpful, but good to know what the breakdown was. So thank you for that.
Talk a little bit about the facilitators, Dan, and how these,
Sure.
when we put together the list of topics and how that conversation, how that kind of goes and ebbs and flows through the meeting and how the facilitator kind of navigates that during a meeting.
Sure, absolutely. And as I stated earlier, the scorecards are there to buffer the facilitator. So if we're having trouble with, getting enough response on the what keeps you up, we might go down one of these paths and say, let's talk about your processes and how your processes are impacting your profitability. And so they'll do roundtable on what do you do in terms of being ready to rent. What do you do with regard on the event side with tent installation, pre-work? What does that look like? Are you doing job costing? What does that look like? Can we all share that? So anything that and you see some of them up here on the screen, anything that is part of your need will get addressed. I will say that the earlier before the meetings, you're able to say, hey, should we do a compensation survey for the group? Should we, all those types of questions, we can do those types of things ahead of the meeting. It's not like you're coming to the meeting unprepared. A skeleton agenda actually comes out to you about a month before the meeting. So you're seeing the itinerary well in advance of the meeting. And then we ask for the members to help fill it in and get it full.
Yeah. I remember my group back in the day, we all brought our credit card processing statements, and everybody dug into those and, kind of looked them over. So that was kind of an interesting topic that we did one time. So.
Absolutely. And some really cutting edge things, you're going to be seeing people who have dynamite training programs, or how they're interacting with the ARA training and how they pull that into their company. How they're utilizing certain things, right? They may have vendors who help them on talent acquisition that are focused on the industry. Where'd you find that person? Let's get that out to the group, that kind of thing.
Yeah. The sharing of the ideas, that's like the biggest benefit, right? Like I was on one of my midpoint calls with one of my groups yesterday, and some of the ideas that they came out of that, like it was awesome. Like just here, and then like one person gives an idea, and then now that idea is disseminated to 10 other people across the country, and like now they're able to take advantage of that. I think it's really neat to see.
Yeah, did we on the agenda, did you address the idea contest at all? I can probably mention that.
I didn't.
So when he's
there.
saying ideas, we actually have some people who've implemented something to fix a problem that has significantly impacted their business. So we do a thing called idea contest, where everybody comes prepared with one thing they implemented, and then we all vote on it, and whoever's is the best idea wins. And you get to have the luxury of whatever money's put in the pile. Sometimes there's money, sometimes it's just, they get to be the king of the day or the queen of the day for having the best idea. But the idea contest is a kind of fun left brain exercise. Some of it may have to do with marketing, some of it may have to do with employee management, or some of it may have to do with operations. So that's a cool element to a meeting.
Yeah.
What you got next?
Sorry, I need there we go. Q&A.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to think what else we might have missed. Oh,
you want me to go back to the agenda?
I know. No. Just stay right here. So one of the things that I did want to mention was every business that's on this call is at a different stage of management. So we have people who join peer groups who are in the entrepreneurial stage of the business. And so they're in a massive growth mode, or trying to get to the growth mode. And so there's a whole bunch of management phase typical activities that happen when you're entrepreneurial and you're just getting started. We'll get United rental sales guys who leave United, and all of a sudden they have their own rental business they're trying to start up. They come into peer groups. It fits. It works. If you get to the next level, you're at growth stage, and growth means you're slightly growing at maybe a slightly higher rate than the industry itself. I would say that's at least 30 to 40% of all of our members are in that growth stage. They're adding additional locations. They're getting additional financing. They're comfortable with debt. We do a lot about debt management. What's the right number for you? Depends on your management phase. So after growth, you then go into a mature stage. You've been around 20 years. You've been around 30 years. You're not coasting, but you're right about average with the industry. You're growing at the same rate. You just want to stay on that and kind of get derive some income from your business, not just invest back into it with growth. And then the last phase after mature state is exit. And exit is everything from I'm going to polish this thing up and I'm going to sell it, or I'm going to transition to my children or my key employees. I just spent last week in California working with a company that decided to sell the business from one owner to 17. So they were selling it to the employees. So it's an ESOP, which is employee owned. And so my job was to do a gap assessment on where they, foundationally, where are they at right now? Who's coming to what peer groups? How's that going to work? But that was, a person who had been in exit stage for a couple of years, and he was kicking the tires on what to do, has now made that choice. And so we try to help peer groups get through that. We do a lot with succession planning and continuation planning. A lot of that may have to do with development, and that has led us to what we call leader groups. So we have 4, Charlie, leader groups?
Yeah. Well, 5.
Five leader
Yeah.
groups. These are groups that do not typically include owners.
Yeah. So, real quick, talk about, I think something we talked about, the benchmarking and the financial aspect of it, but also around the kind of the succession planning. One of the things that I think is great about these groups is that you might not be in a point where you're ready to transition your business, but maybe somebody else in the group is going through one, and you kind of get to ride shotgun with them as they go through that process and kind of see their experience going through it. And you can kind of learn, kind of some lessons through that, watching other people go through different stages of that business, even if you might not be in that particular stage yourself, which I think is really a good benefit. And you kind of get to see it from the inside out, so to speak. So I think that's important.
Leveling up, right? So
Yeah.
I think Bruce is, I think, unmuted, but Bruce is in a group where he has a number of people that are just above where he's at in terms of number of employees. And then there's some that are a lot more employees. So he can kind of see that stepping stone from where his operation is to the next level and not have to kind of figure it out on his own. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
But,
well, and the other comment I would make around the benchmarking is the advantage of being in a peer group and having that group of 10 other people, that when you see your financial performance next to an industry average, you've got 8 to 10 other people that you can go to and say, hey, your personnel costs are this percentage compared to mine, or this percentage. What are you and I doing differently? And you've got that resource and that person that you can ask questions of, versus just looking at it on a sheet of paper and saying, oh, we need to spend less on personnel, when really maybe that's not the case. There's, whatever the case might be. I'm just using that as an example, but having those people to bounce ideas off of and really kind of dig into the meat of what they're encapsulating, whether that's maybe they're paying 100% of the health insurance, or maybe they don't offer health insurance, so their personnel costs are lower. Like all those kinds of questions that you can't see in a number, you're able to get answers to, sitting in the meeting room with each other and talking and getting to know each other.
Yep. Yeah, I would just also make a quick comment, and then we'll take any questions you might have on onboarding. So when somebody wants to join, we had 71 join this year, Charlie?
I think so. That sounds about
71. Right. So the way it works when you join is you just let Charlie know. It's real sophisticated.
I got a QR code on the next slide.
Oh, cool. So the idea is you let us know, we get a profile, we match you with the group, we start selling you to the group, we start selling the group to you because it's a two-way street. You have to like the group that you're going to. Do people move groups? Absolutely, all the time. That's part of our fun every 6 months, is shifting people to different groups. It's not a lot, but when you have 230,
Mhm.
even if 10%
There's a little
move,
movement, not a ton.
yeah, if you have, well, 5% would be what, like 12.
Yeah.
So moving 12 people is not easy, but 10% movement would be 24 people or whatever. So, but there's just a lot going on. We have some interesting deals. So if a person's in one group for a while and they want to try another group, we can let them have a second group at 50% off. And that seems to be attracting a lot of people to second group, but now you're traveling twice as much. So
Right. Yeah.
you have to make your own choices about that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
ultimately, really cool stuff going on with the groups. Bruce has one of the coolest groups, but I say that to any member. But
They have their own T-shirts.
yeah, they have. So actually, that's a good point. So each group has their own name. They do their own governance, and they create their own logos and their own sportswear, right? So
Mhm.
we like
Yep.
to get included. And if we get a baseball cap from Rat Bag, which is Rental Advisory Team Business Analysis Groups,
Yep.
Rat Bag, they've been around 15
We
years.
have a logo.
We have crazy names, Rentalosis, Flirty, different names like that for different groups. So
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another aspect of this is like we leave that up to the groups, right? Like
yeah.
we're a company that puts these together and gets you in a room with other people. And Bruce, you can kind of comment on this if you want, but like we leave who the members are of the group are up to the group. We'll suggest and we'll give prospects and that kind of thing, but the final decision is up to the group itself.
Yeah, I mean, we've had people introduced to us, and basically they kind of went through an interview process where we find out about them through a meeting like what we're having right now, and then also they get to see about us.
Right.
And things go well, we'll invite them to a meeting, just see how things go.
Yeah.
And then the group will vote, whether or not they want the person to join. They'll extend that invitation, and it's up to the person if they want to accept the invitation.
Right.
So, and us, I mean, we've had some members leave, we've had members come in, and we still have a good core group of people, and it's been a great experience. I've learned so much. Like you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And I'm second generation rental. I've been, working here for about almost 40 years myself. When I was a kid, and first meeting, one of our members there, he was like, when he found out we didn't charge damage waiver, he's like, "What are you guys, stupid or something?" Or it was just kind of calls me out on it right there. And
Yep.
that was one of the first things we implemented, after that meeting.
Yep. Bruce, you and I have that in common. The same exact thing happened to me at my first peer group meeting.
So,
Yep. Same exact thing. And I made $100,000 the first year on damage waiver.
yeah.
All right, enough damage waiver talk.
You get rental guys who go down wormholes. That's what the facilitators are supposed to pull back, right?
They do.
I did my job. Any questions?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Any questions?
Yeah, we have. Go ahead to the QR code. Flip to the next slide there, Charlie. So the idea is, we actually have a new website coming out. Charlie, we got a date on that yet, man? It's been like
it's
weeks.
coming.
Come on. So the new website should be up soon, but the old website will do. You'll find out information about facilitators there. Also,
well, then this QR code takes you to a form to fill out to give me your information, and then we'll if you're interested in joining a group, looking to find a group or that kind of thing, scan the QR code, fill that out, and then I'll reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yep, we appreciate it. questions, dig into anything you want.
I didn't get any questions in the chat, so
Okay.
we must have put them all to sleep.
Possibly. I will say
Although
that
Matt's been smiling the whole time.
well, I
so
actually,
he's,
I want to
he's
give
enjoying the meeting.
I definitely want to say one thing. So we've had people that want to join peer groups before they did a rental. So we had somebody come to our booth at the ARA show.
Oh, that's right.
And they were yet to have their first rental, but they're from the industry. And they're like, yeah, we want to start in a peer group. I'm like, we probably want a rental before. but we did have people with a very, very, very small fleet. 2 to 3 employees. So we've had those members join and go from there. And then we've had some very large operations. I have one peer group, which is a dealer peer group, which, their average rentals over 20 million, their average revenues over 100 million. 2 guys in the room have 1,000 employees. So that's quite a different peer group experience. A lot of different conversations take place. But most of it's the same, to be honest with you. It's like,
Yeah,
they have the same issues everybody has. And that's whether you have a $20 million person sitting next to you and you're a 2 million, never, ever let that phase you. And Bruce will be the first one to tell you, Bruce has got like 3 or 4 people doing over 20 million in a group, or 15 million or something like that. And they have the same issues that you have. You're in a different management phase and you're trying to get to the next step. And so you're going to have similar things keeping you up at night.
No other questions? Anybody? Before we wrap up? Guess not. We must have covered them pretty good, Dan. We answered all their questions along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we have we're in almost all 50 states at this point. I don't think we have done an actual check on that, but with 235 members, we're probably close.
We're getting close.
Check it. We have meetings everywhere. So we've been to Hawaii 4 times, I think, Cabo San Lucas 6 times. But most of the time we're in Chicago or Dallas or Denver, right? Someplace in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
Makes it easy.
90% of the time you can't get a direct flight.
We had a great meeting this past spring in Toronto. We got to tour the Skyjack facilities, and we had a really good meeting there. So,
yeah, the vendor suppliers to the industry have been great. Just tremendous being able to tour their facilities and make it part of our peer group experience for people.
Yeah. Well, we've also had ARA sit in on our meetings. I mean, Josh has sat in on meetings, and we've had other people from the staff that have sat in on meetings, and it really is great, and it really adds another layer of benefit to being in the group.
Excellent.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, what we'll do is we'll wrap up the call, but we will be sending out a copy of this recording along with the slide deck. I know some of you weren't able to get in for the full call, so we'll definitely get that out to you. We'll also have it in our RentalU platform if you do have additional questions on it. With that, I think we'll wrap up the call. Thanks everybody for joining us today.